Amen. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Anybody know that you've been changed? Is there anybody in the house that can look back over their life and see that you're not the way you used to be? Anybody can testify that God has done a new thing in your life? For a minute there, I thought I was by myself. Good God Almighty. Thank you, Jesus. Lord, we thank you. We bless your name in this place. Speak to us. For know that if you speak, we shall be forever changed. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. 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 Y'all pray for me. I'm going to get it together here in a minute. Amen. There's just something about Jesus. Jeremiah said it's like fire. Shut up in my bones. Something about Jesus. Something about Jesus. I wish I had some folk in here that knew what I was talking about. Amen. Hallelujah. Would you stand with me? Galatians 6th chapter. We shall read for you here in verse 7. I shall read through to verse 9. Be not deceived. Are you there yet? God is not mocked, for whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. He that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth of the Spirit shall the Spirit reap life everlasting. And let us not be weary in the well-doing. For in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Amen. Somebody say, don't faint before you finish. Amen. You may have this. Amen. I don't know y'all and y'all don't know me. And I'm an old country preacher. One thing I do know, I believe, Pastor, that the deacons here are going to help me preach today. Amen. Because they are preaching deacons from my understanding. Amen. But I don't know about the rest of y'all because I don't know y'all that well. But before, I'd like to sing a song to do a test to see if y'all from the country, because a lot of folks like to claim the country. They like to claim they from down south. Amen. But I'm going to test you in a minute. Amen. But we thank God for this preaching opportunity. Thank God for Pastor Banks. Amen. A wonderful, sincere man of God. Amen. Everything I've heard about him has been positive. Amen. In particular, what has been said concerning him is he's not after anything but the will of God. Amen. That's the word on the street, Doc. Amen. Yes. Thank God for Reverend Page, who labors with him in this ministry. Amen. And we also thank God for the bunch who come to be with us today. Amen. True friend of mine. We thank God for all of you, the saints of God who are here, who labor in the gospel ministry, whatever you do, whether you are deacons, trustees, whether you sing in the choir, whether you pick up a paper on the way out of the church to make sure the church is clean, whatever you do. Amen. We give you honor today. It's good, so glad for you to be here, especially since you knew I was going to preach it today, be preaching today, and you came anyway. Amen. That's all right. Amen. That's a little song that says, even me. Y'all know that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It says, Lord, I hear a shout of blessing. Thou art strengthful and free. Showers of thirsty souls, refreshing. And some drops now fall on me. Come on, will you help me say that? Lord, I hear. Lord, showers of blessings. Of blessings. Thou art scattering. Between full and free. Showers of thirsty. Come on, sing it, saints. Still so refreshing. Refreshing. Anybody want some drops? Let some now fall on me. Now fall. Come on, even me. Come on, give me my hand. And I guess y'all are from the country. Amen. Lord, let some drops fall on me. Y'all mind if we just get right down to business? Galatians. Paul is talking to the Galatians, and we pick him up in chapter 6. And he is speaking to them from verse 1 through 10. And he's speaking to them, encouraging them to do good things. To do some good works. When your brother or your sister is caught up in a fault, go to them, restore them, do some good thing. Watch yourself and make sure in the midst of doing your good stuff, you don't get caught up yourself. Come on, am I in the book? See, he says, and we find him, and let me run to our text where we're preaching from, verse 9. He says, while you're doing this good stuff, he says, don't be weary in your well-doing. Now, we're going to talk about well-doing, but I think it is fitting, first of all, to talk about the other doing. Because where he's encouraging us not to be weary in well-doing, there ought to be some things that we ought to be weary of. Quite frankly, there are some things that we ought to be tired of. Some things that we have done over and over and over and over again that we ought to be, quite frankly, tired of, sick and tired of. Y'all gonna pray with me? What are you talking about, preacher? I'm talking about, I don't know, at some point, you ought to be tired of having hangovers from drinking all night the night before. At some point, you ought to be weary. At some point. Now, y'all let me know if I'm out of place now, if I can't say this kind of stuff in here. But at some point, At some point, we ought to be weary of going to the same club, dancing to the same old music, and clubbing and dancing with the same old people. At some point, we ought to be weary of empty relationships. At some point, we ought to be tired of folks running when they see us because we are always starting up some junk and bickering and amen. Young folk, at some point, you ought to be weary of mama and daddy telling you to clean your room. We ought to be weary of something. Can I get a witness? Paul said, Galatians, don't be weary of your well-doing. I look at Paul and I look at his writings. I'm thinking that he must have been a runner or either a sports fan or sports fanatic, because he often used these sports analogies. I say that to try to help you out, brethren, so when you get ready to watch the Super Bowl next Sunday, he must have been a sports fanatic. I don't know, some people believe the book of Hebrews were written by various people, perhaps, but I subscribe that perhaps it was written to Paul, and due to this, during this discourse, we'll just agree for now. After 1 o'clock, we can go our separate ways, but at least for now, let us agree that Paul was the writer of Hebrews 12. Is that all right? Just for now, just for now. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about 12:1 with so great a cloud of witness, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. Suggests that he knew something about running. And then if we just skip down to verse 3, he says, for consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners, him being Christ, against himself. Then he says, lest ye be wearied and faint in your mind. See, the preacher, why you in Galatians, why are we all the way over here in Hebrew? Because there's something I want you to see about weariness. He says, lest ye be wearied and faint in your mind. Listen, he's saying that, and the point I want you to get here is that we faint in our minds before we faint in our actions.